Welcome to Passport Required. I'm Kim Covert, owner and lead travel designer at Silverleaf Travel.
And I'm Gary Covert. Together, we are on a mission to help experienced travelers and would-be travelers get even more informed, inspired, and get moving so that they can enjoy great travel experiences and make memories that will last.
We believe that travel offers so many opportunities to improve the quality of our lives. Travel helps us learn more about the world, ourselves, and those closest to us. It keeps us vibrant, fresh, and connected, and travel helps us celebrate life.
We invite you to join the Silverleaf Travel Facebook page so that we can amplify our impact and help people get off of and stay off of what we'd like to call Someday Island.
We know you're going to love this episode, so let's get after it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode. Really excited about this episode. As you will hear, we're talking Italy, which is one of my favorite subjects I get asked a lot about. Gary, unfortunately, hasn't been with me quite yet, but we are going to make plans, I'm sure, here very soon. But there's many ways to travel throughout Italy or around Italy via cruise. You can do it by land, either independently or with a escorted group coach tour. So if you are intrepid and you have a backpack and you just want to go, that's one way you can do it on your own. Or if you need some help and putting all these logistics together and making an iconic trip through Italy, just let me know. But it's one of my favorite countries, and I definitely will be back many times over, as you will hear in this episode. So thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. It's Kim Covert.
And I'm Gary Covert.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Passport Required. I'm really excited because it's one of my favorite countries in Europe. We're talking Italy. Italiano.
I have very little to say about it because you have gone many times and I'm putting up
goose egg.
This many zero times.
People could see.
This many zero times I've gone.
Sorry.
But you've got many times, and I would like to go. I'd love to go. You keep talking it up. And actually, to be fair, you have offered many times, but just because of schedules and things like that, I'm just so busy.
We just
have not been able to take advantage of that. But I know that is a super popular location for your clients, and I can hear you in your office. You're always talking to them about Italy. So
number one.
Yeah. So it'd be really, I'm interested to have this conversation with you because now we could maybe start making some plans.
Let's do it.
Plan some ideas in my head of what we should do, how we attack this.
A lot of ideas, It's one country I'd love to go back several times. There's still so much to see. It's such a big country. People will call me and say, I have 5 days. Let's go to Italy. Well, you kind of need a little bit more time than that. Think of the United States. Would you go for 5 days? Probably not. And if you do go for a short amount of time, you want to focus on one particular area.
Yeah, you pick a geography. I mean, if you really just have five days, maybe you've done something else in Europe and you've got 5 days that you can allocate to Italy. I'm sure you can have a good time there, right? But
Absolutely.
You just got to be
just choose
tactical.
Yeah.
What you
if you want to see all of Italy, you'll need at least a couple weeks, because you think of the time that you lose traveling between city to city. The train system there is amazing, but you do have to check out of your hotel, go to the train station, get on your train, go to so you do lose a whole day instead of being able to do touristy things. So I always recommend staying in each city a minimum of 3 full days. So if you only have a week, that's 2 cities basically, and then your travel day in between.
Okay, and these are some of the major cities. Is that what you're saying?
Major cities, yeah. Okay. You have a short amount of time, and then we can talk geographically about the various parts of Italy and what might be more interesting to one person versus another person. But it's one of the most popular destinations right now. So if this is someplace you're thinking of, plan it up at least a year out if you can. The farther out you plan, the more options you'll have. Pricing will be better. It's kind of expensive right now. Flight prices obviously are really expensive right now, but we're hoping that'll come down in the next year or so. But
one can hope.
We can hope.
Hope is a dangerous thing.
It's supply and demand. Like, there's so many people who want to travel through Europe right now, and especially Italy. It's so expensive compared to the pre-grand pause that we had. There's so much to see. There's the culture and the artwork and the food and the countryside and the wine regions, and there's just so much. It's such there's the people are amazing. The food is amazing. the easeability of every city is just amazing. That's why I just gush over Italy.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they have cities and regions named after my favorite foods.
Yes.
I was looking at a map. I was looking at a map earlier, and I love Strombolis, and I was like, "There's a whole island called Stromboli." I want to go there.
You're not going to have a bad meal or bad gelato wherever you go,
right.
or wine. It's a great country. And I would say like the best time to go would be the shoulder season, which is the spring or fall. So April, May, September, October. Mm-hmm. I've gone in both time frames, and it's really lovely. I would definitely avoid the summer. It's hot. It's crowded. August, all the Europeans take their vacation, so it's going to be extra crowded and extra hot. So try to do like September, October, or May. Yeah, April, May. Okay. So those are good times and good pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the train system there is really easy. You can drive if you, so I've driven.
We have a family bias against driving in different countries. You can certainly do it.
I would say more so in the countryside. You might even need to be driving in the countryside. Fair. It's much easier in the countryside, obviously, than the cities. In the main cities, they're busy. You're not going to know where to park. The signs are all in Italian. Mm-hmm. It's not common sense of where you could park legally. Mm-hmm. Once you get more south, and especially like in Amalfi Coast, those roads are so narrow and so windy. And you have these gigantic mega buses coming through there with their coach tours going through these windy roads that you've got to avoid. And then the parking, it's just, why stress yourself out? Mm-hmm. Get a driver. Do a coach tour, do something else, take the train. Unless you really have to drive, I wouldn't suggest it. Yeah. So I've driven from France to Italy, and that was not the most common experience.
Yeah. You went to, what was that? Siena is where you went.
Siena was, we did a lot in Italy, but that was the main city that I had the most problem driving around. And because you can't drive in the old town of Siena, you can only drive around the edge. And we couldn't figure out where to park because everything said no parking and big red X's. And so we drove around for like 2 hours trying to figure it out. And finally we just said, oh, screw it. We'll just park it. And if our cars are open, right. God bless us. Out in the countryside, we had the greatest time driving, in the wine countries and the rolling hills and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe pick your mode based on your home base and where you're going from.
Yeah.
But it might not be your primary mode of transportation.
A lot of popular cities are Venice, Florence, Rome, maybe Naples. As you're going south, Amalfi Coast, many, many flights go into Venice, many go into Rome. You might have a little harder time for, say, Naples. You probably have a lot of one stops from the U.S. So I usually recommend people starting like Rome. It's easy, and then you can do an itinerary from there. But starting from the north of Italy, obviously you have Venice. Everybody knows Venice and what to do in Venice. So you can fly into Venice. Cruises are also very popular in Venice. Just know that the big mega ships can't get into the canals of Venice right now. So they've banned them since there was a big accident there a few years ago. So with like the big Royal Caribbeans and Norwegians, even the somewhat midships and smaller ships like Oceania, they have to port out in different ports now. And one of the popular ones, and I apologize, Italy, for massacring all these cities because I don't speak Italian. It's, I think, Trieste. That's becoming a very popular port for the cruise lines, but that is an hour and a half away. So plan accordingly. Okay. There's some logistics that need to be.
Yeah, you're not in Venice, you're in Venice adjacent.
Exactly.
So, okay.
Or if you sail out of Rome, or even if you're taking a cruise that has a stop in Rome, just know, looking at a map, Rome is inland about an hour and a half, depending on traffic. So you got to kind of build that into your travel time if you're doing things like that.
Hearing that, I mean, for somebody who hasn't been to Italy before, like me, would you recommend doing it as a cruise or would you recommend doing it as land?
It depends on how much you want to see. Like if you want to just a taste of different cities, a cruise is good because obviously you're only in there a day. It's a floating hotel, basically. So you're in a day. Some cruises stay overnight in some of the ports. I'll give you a little taste and maybe you'll see a city that you want to go back to and see more. But cities like Rome, you could spend 3-4 full days there and just scratch the surface of what's there to see.
I've heard that there in the Vatican, there's 50 miles of hallways with artwork.
I believe it.
50 miles.
It's so much. That's like the Louvre in France is 2 days. I mean, you can't see everything in one day or even a half day. So there's just so much to see, and it just depends on what you want to do.
Mhm.
But I think it's so easy to get around that doing it by land is a great way to see Italy.
Okay. So Rome would be a good home base?
You could do Rome a home base. You can do, you can even start in Venice and see Venice and the canals. And there's a few things that you can do within the city itself. But if you want to stay longer, or say you have a cruise going in and out of it, come in a few days early, you can use that as a home base and go out to Verona or Bologna. There's a lake called Lake Garda. There's a town, again, sorry if I'm going to massacre this, Bassano del Grappa. There's all these really charming towns that are a very easy direct train ride from Venice. Super easy, like hour and a half. So you can just do it as a day trip. Go out to Verona, see Romeo and Juliet, and what Verona has to offer, and then come back. And the next day, maybe go to Bologna or go to Bassano del Grappa, which is the base of these mountains. It's really pretty. So that you could stay there longer and not have to move around. But then if you want to go to another major city, there's Florence, which is only a 2-hour direct train ride from Venice. Super easy. You can go from Venice down to Florence and then use Florence as a home base. Again, there's so much in Florence that you can see, the Statue of David, things like that. But then you're so close to the Tuscan region. There's San Gimignano, and there's, of course, there's Siena, there's Pisa. There's, I can't even think of Arezzo. There's so many little towns around there. So you could stay in Florence for a long time and use that as a home base.
Okay.
You could do a day trip to Cinque Terre, basically. Cinque Terre is a little harder to get to than people think. It's this coastal village, but it's a little challenging. 'Cause from Florence, it is like a 3.5-hour train ride with a stop most days. Only on Sundays do they have a direct train, which is about a 2.5-hour train ride. But it's harder to go from, say, Venice to Cinque Terre. You would have to go Venice, Florence, stay, do whatnot, then go to Cinque Terre, then come back to Florence, and then move on to the next city. Okay. So that's why Cinque Terre is good for cruises. That's why it's really popular. To stay in Cinque Terre, it's challenging, not the best accommodations, not a lot of accommodations. It's better to kind of stay outside the little villages and then just go in for the day. But there's lots. I mean, I've stayed outside of Florence. We stayed at a kind of like an Airbnb type place just outside of San Gimignano, and it had multiple units, kind of like apartments, and they had a kitchen, and you can cook dinners, and they had a pool, and it was really beautiful. It's ones that you kind of see in the movies that are up on a hill, and there's vineyards all around, and they have a pool, and it's beautiful old stone buildings and everything like that. So you can stay there, but you might need a car out in the Tuscan region or private driver. So if you want to stay like in that San Gimignano area, you can take a train. There's a town close to it, and then arrange for a car to come pick you up from the train station and take you to where you're staying. And a lot of these places know how this all works, and they'll have a driver, can arrange something, and then you can do day trips from there and see, go wine tasting, things like that. So it's nice. That's one of my particular favorite areas just because I love wine. It's so pretty. And then from Florence, you can go down to Rome, easy, 1.5-hour direct train ride again. And then Rome, I would say you can spend a majority of your time in Rome. There's obviously so much to see, the Colosseums and the Vatican and the Spanish Steps, and there's just a lot to see and whatever your interests are. So you could take at least 3 days there just for Rome alone. And if you don't hit Florence, you can stay in Rome and do Florence as a day trip. You can take the morning train, do maybe a city tour in Florence, and then come back to Rome. So you don't have to move. So you could go, say, from Venice down to Rome, stay in Rome, and just see Florence as a day trip. Okay.
So maybe you touched on this a little bit already, but where does the Amalfi Coast fit into that?
And then that's after this. Amalfi Coast is south of Rome. And what I suggest people do is take the train from Rome down to Naples.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hour, I think it is, an hour train ride. You don't necessarily need to stay in Naples. What I suggest is get a private driver, pick you up from the train station, stop at Pompeii on the way to Amalfi Coast and see Pompeii because it's on the way. It's really easy. And it is the most fascinating thing to see. I didn't think that I would enjoy Pompeii as much as I did, and I would love to go back.
You're not a huge history buff.
No. And that was a really interesting, and we had a great tour guide. I mean, that's really makes it too. Don't go by yourself and just wander. You really need a tour guide to show you what you're looking at and show you really unique spots of Pompeii. Yeah, that was just the best experience that day. And then they can take you on to the Amalfi Coast. I like putting people in Sorrento. It's a very manageable little town. It's up on a cliff on the beach. It's a great walking town, great restaurants, great shopping. It's, of course, it's beautiful there. Could be a little less expensive than actually staying in the Amalfi Coast, but it's like Amalfi Coast adjacent. And you could still do the same day tours that you can when you're staying down on the Amalfi Coast. You can still go out to Capri. You could still go to Positano. You could still do Ravello, all these things. So that's where I like putting people is in Sorrento. But you could stay in Positano. That's not a problem either. Just know physically, you're lots of steps. That's that hillside town that you see in a lot of
it's that one that's just like hanging off the side.
Yeah, it's all stairs, little roads. Yeah, you got to have some physical ability to stay in Positano. We stayed at a hotel there, and it didn't have an elevator. So the owners lugged our bags upstairs for us. But just know, it's a little bit more challenging. But it is a beautiful city to stay in. I've stayed in it. And if you stay in Sorrento, you can do probably 3 days as well, at least from there. And one day you go out to Capri, do the Blue Grotto if the weather permits, where it's
This would be a boat tour?
Yeah, it's a boat tour. So you can either do it as a private boat tour out to Capri, or you can take the shuttle out to Capri, or do it as a group thing. But I like private or small group. And we did it with a small group of people. And the guy played music, and we had lunch, and we stopped and swam in one spot. But he did the entire island. There's many grottos. There's like the Green Grotto, White Grotto, and then the famous Blue Grotto, which you actually can't go into yourself. You have to join another tour operator. And it's only weather permitting because it's a very small opening where you have to lay down in a boat. And you go into this cave, and it opens up, and everything's blue. Like the water's all blue. It's very famous. So it's kind of hit and miss whether or not you'll actually get inside the Blue Grotto. But the other
permitting, it'll feel very special if you do.
Absolutely. But the other grottos you can kind of see from the outside. You could see that they're green or white or whatnot. And then the actual island of Capri is really interesting. So lots to do and see and shop. And
what are some of the things on the island?
It's really mountainous. So you can hike to the top. They have a like a chairlift situation at the top, but there's lots of shopping. There's an old church, great restaurants. It's just a beautiful island. That water is so beautiful there. So it's really famous. It's not too far off the coast. And then another day you can do Amalfi Coast, which is the town of Amalfi, which is on the beach, on the coast. But one of my favorite towns is the town just above it, up on the hill, is Ravello. It's so pretty, and I highly recommend stopping there. It's just up a little road above Amalfi, and the views up there are spectacular. And it's just unreal. You're so far up, and it's this amazing view, and there's these beautiful gardens up there, and an old church. I think there's an old church in every town in Europe, but anyway, and a great restaurant that overlooks the mountains, and it's a really pretty town. And that's another nice stop. But lemon farms are very popular in this area. That's their literal like bread and butter in the history of the Amalfi Coast and that in Sorrento. So they used to grow much more lemons through the years, but as obviously more countries have started to grow lemons, that kind of collapsed their business. So that's how come they started with like limoncello and things like that, is to find a new market for the lemons.
Do some added value there.
So you can go to a lemon farm, see how it works. You can have dinner on a lemon farm. You could stay on a lemon farm. We stayed on a lemon farm one time for about a week and just did day trips from there. And then from the Amalfi Coast area, depending on where you stay, there's some really unique, smaller, not as known towns. There's a coastal town on the opposite side of Amalfi Coast called Bari, and you could go over there. It's a little bit of a challenge. You got to take the train from Naples or get a private driver and get over there. It's about a 4-hour train from Naples, but you can stay over in Bari and from there take day tours, a couple day tours. You only need a few days there, but there's a town called Matera, and it's known for, it's kind of like the city of caves. There's all these caves that are built into it and like stone churches. And it's this big rock fortress up on a hill. It's really beautiful. I want to see this. This is an area I haven't been yet. And then another town, and I'm going to massacre this one too. Alberobello. Alberobello. I think it's pronounced.
Alberobello.
I think it's how it's pronounced.
Okay.
And it's these whitewashed stone huts with these kind of thatched circular roofs, but like the whole village is like this. And it's supposed to be amazing to see and charming. And that's a must see, apparently, on everyone's list, is to see this. So these are things that you can do from Bari, and it's supposed to be a beautiful coastal town. So I'd like to see that on my list the next time I go. And you can also go into more of the heel, like Lecce, the toe. You can go over to Sicily, the things like that. I would say Sicily would be more of its own trip, like fly from Rome to Sicily. So Sicily kind of is its own little thing. And so there's a lot to see, depending on what your interests are, obviously.
Well, not knowing anything else, my interests are the food, the history, get to know the people. So it sounds like, for me, the way you described it, picking a home base and maybe 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how much time you've got, and doing those day trips, that really sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I would say like if we had 2 weeks, I wouldn't mind doing like Venice for a little bit, and then Rome for a little bit, and then doing the Bari area. Just because I hadn't done that area, with the Amalfi on the way, like stopping with and doing Amalfi so it could show you that. Yeah, it's almost like Italy is very similar to the United States, where you have to go back a couple times because it's just too hard to see it all in one trip.
Yeah, it's not like one of those things where you just check off the box. Well, that's true with almost any kind of travel location.
True. And then starting next year, you might have heard of this. Everybody's calling it this visa for Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually not a visa, and it's not for all of Europe. But this is something that has been in the works for several years, and they've postponed it because of the pandemic. And now it sounds like it's going to be launched in some point 2024. But it is called European Travel Information and Authorization System form, an ETIAS. And it's very similar to what Australia and New Zealand do. And it's an online form. You pay a small fee, you put in your information, and they approve it. You take your QR code and you show it to them upon arrival. And it's good for several years and several entries. So you just do it once, and it's good for a couple of years. So you don't have to do it every time you go to Europe. And it won't be for every single country within Europe. Stay tuned with which countries they will be. I won't go through it in this podcast, but it'll be specific ones that will require it. But I believe Italy is on that list. So that's coming.
All right. So to wrap it up, what would be like your top tips for somebody new going to Italy like me?
Save your time and money, and really try to do as much as you can in the time that you have. Try to really immerse yourself in Italy and enjoy. Bring your stretchy pants.
For all the good food.
It's all the good food and the gelato and the wine.
Yep.
Yeah, but you do walk around, I guess. You just got to go more than once.
And it sounds very accessible.
Very. Yeah. The train is great. Just remember, you're having to bring your own bags on and off the train. So, and storage is limited. So small bags. I made that mistake the first year. I brought a gigantic bag and nowhere to put it on the train.
Gigantic American. We've done that before too, where the got our big American international size.
Get in the train, you're like
suitcases, and they're like, they just roll their eyes.
Maybe have an empty suitcase for all the stuff you're going to buy and the wine you're going to buy.
Well, I'm excited. I want to go. I've been wanting to go for a long time, but that helps for me kind of think about how to approach it, so that it's accessible in different ways. All right, before we sign off here, so of the many trips that you've gone without me, Well, what was the best? This might be hard to pick. What was the best dollar that you spent?
My best dollar I spent, kind of in the same thing as some of our other trips, is a mug that I bought. I love buying coffee mugs wherever I go. If it fits and feels right, and it's going to be something that I'm going to remember forever. But I fell in love with Ravello when we went this last time, me and my girlfriend, and I wanted something to remember that spot from. And we happened to walk into a shop, and she had all these handmade things and just all sorts of arts and crafts. And she had this gigantic coffee mug with the lemons on it, and it says Ravello on it. And I had to get it and spent a little bit of money on it, and it packed it preciously. And to this day, that's like one of my favorite mugs.
Makes you smile every time
I remember that day.
You have coffee and thinking about that.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, I'm looking forward to spending my best dollar there.
I'm looking forward to taking you and spending your money.
We'll see how that works out, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. So, everybody grab your passport and let's go. Thanks for listening to Passport Required. Please be sure and join the Silverleaf Travel Facebook page so that we can connect with you. It is also a great place to share your own travel tips, experiences, and wisdom with the Silverleaf Travel community.
If you got something out of this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and also give us a rating and review. We always want to get better, and we will read all of your comments and suggestions for topics so that we can make this podcast the best resource possible. My name is Gary Covert.
And I'm Kim Covert. Thanks for listening, and thank you for being a part of the Silverleaf Travel community.